People who saved themselves for marriage and eventually got divorced. What was your approach towards sex after the divorce? Honestly, same situation with my ex-wife. She's Mormon. I'm not. We dated for like 6 months after meeting while I was in college. I was 21. She was 23. Married for like 11 years, had a son in 2011. We divorced in 2018. I'm 100% positive she hasn't even dated anyone since the divorce, let alone have sex. Edit. Someone commented and said something about a temple marriage and her still thinking we're married. Actually, much to the disdain of pretty much everyone on her side of the family and friend circle, we didn't actually have a temple marriage. I was never considered temple worthy because I kept doing things like drinking alcohol and masturbating and watching R-rated movies. I went to one of their temples once, but I wasn't allowed inside. So no, she doesn't think we'll be reunited or anything. Our 9-year-old son, however, has mentioned that when we die we'll be a family again, and that one, breaks my fucking heart that he believes that, and two, is really awkward when he says shit like that around my partner. One of my lifelong friends comes from an extremely Christian family. All 3 kids were taught how bad sex before marriage is. 2 of the 3 ended up with children out of wedlock. My close friend of these siblings saved herself but ended up rushing into marriage with very little self-awareness and found herself in a completely sexually, and otherwise, incompatible marriage. All 3 are divorced at least once now. One has more baby mamas than I can keep track of. After my friend's divorce she abandoned the no sex before marriage business. She didn't have any wild escapades but developed strong sexual, and otherwise, chemistry with her now husband. Her parents still tried to shame them. It was a clusterfuck to watch over the years. This is every Christian kid I knew growing up. I was a public school kid and the Christian kids came to one of our parties one night. Parents found out and went all bananas about how they're not allowed to be around us degenerates. I went to medical school, mid-30s, no kids yet, but it's on the radar. Other friends are lawyers, executives, and teachers. None of us have ever been arrested or had a child out of wedlock, as if that was a problem ever. I digress, and we're all happily on our first marriage. The Christian school kids all had kids out of wedlock. 3 of them had 2 kids before they were 20 with 2 different baby mamas, before or during college with people they are no longer in relationships. More than a couple of them have arrest records and all of them are divorced at least once, some of them twice. Good question. I'm an ex-Mormon and was a virgin when I got married at 21. Was married for over 6 years, had a good, active sex life, and when I got divorced 2 years back, it was a strange new world. I was excited to have sex with new people, but I quickly found after a handful of hookups that it wasn't always that great. There were some exceptions obviously, but I often find that people who haven't been in long-term relationships are pretty lousy in bed. Having a bunch of one-night stands doesn't make you better at fucking emo, getting to know someone's body and experimenting does. If I could do it over again, I wouldn't have saved myself for marriage. The best sex I've had has been after my divorce. I have a general rule now that I won't have sex on the first date. I like having more of an emotional connection with the other person. It's more enjoyable that way for me. Got married in my mid-20s, not realizing that asexuality was even a thing, let alone that I could possibly apply to a good Christian boy who had saved himself. Purity culture in some Christian circles can be a really rough time. We were married for about a year and a half, and I only ever came once from sex or sexual interaction with her. It was really rough for both of us, the hits to her self-esteem, the belief that I was broken in some way. Over time we just stopped really trying. A whole lot of other factors played into the split, but that was definitely one of them. I spent a couple of years after avoiding all possible romantic entanglements, then ventured out a little and found some open-minded people who I briefly dated here or there. It was nice to be close to someone again, and I have found that I really like making other people have a good time. There is something immensely satisfying to me to be the cause of someone else's satisfaction, but it can be a little hard for a partner since I am so devoid of sexual reaction. It takes a fair bit of reassurance and good communication to keep that stuff good and healthy, and so they don't feel like they are using me or that I find them repulsive or whatever. Still a work in progress, I guess. As someone who falls into this category, I felt like I'd been sold such a lie. I was told from the time I was a little girl, which is super creepy BTW, that anything sexual before marriage was wrong, so I didn't have it until getting married to my first boyfriend at 19, cause you know, the whole you can't have sex unless you're married or else it not only means you're bad, dirty, ungodly, won't be blessed, maybe won't go to heaven, and definitely no one else will ever want you situation that I was told I was in. Anyway, after leaving my abusive sex several years in, I realized waiting was such a terrible idea. I had no idea about consent, a healthy life, communication, etc. All that to say, my views changed to that of thinking people should have sex with people they care about / love / just want to have sex with if everyone is an adult and wanting the same thing. I would never encourage my kids to wait until marriage, quite the opposite. Learn about your sexuality, safe sex, consent, comparability, etc. Don't rely on Sky Daddy to somehow weirdly just bless your virginal abusive sex life. TLDR, 010 would not do waiting until marriage again. I only partially fit here because my husband is the only person I've ever been with. We come from a yeehaw town that teaches abstinence as their sex ed. Lots of teen pregnancy here. For reference, I was shocked when my husband put it in. I didn't know it went in there. We didn't wait until we were married to have sex, but we did stay together all through high school and college, and I have never been with anyone else. He had sex with a previous girlfriend. We now have 2 children together and are going to approach the whole sex talk very differently than our parents did. Whether they're ready or not, teens have sex. I would rather my children be educated and safe when they're ready to take that step. As far as sex goes, I just can't really picture sex with anyone else / get turned on by the thought of sex with anyone else. I only know what sex with him is like, and he knows my body and what I like, so I have no complaints. He's my best friend and I don't ever see us getting a divorce, but if we did, I imagine I would have a pretty hard time wanting to have sex with anyone else, not for religious reasons. Not who you asked, but I believe waiting was bad for us too. I think it's more of an issue for me than my husband then and now. For me, sex was initially incredibly painful, and it took our first year of marriage for me to even be able to work up to having penetrative sex, so we didn't even do that until year 2. Which really sucked because, kind of expect to just be able to have sex with your partner. Since he didn't have any practice, there was an issue with him coming incredibly fast, or never coming at all because he'd get so self-conscious. So I think I could have figured out and worked out my end before having a sexless, penetrative, we did other stuff, year of marriage, and he could have used the practice. Besides that, I also realized I was bi a few months before getting married. While we have sex fairly regularly now, I still have never come with him, and I am wondering if part of that reason is just that maybe I'm more attracted to females, maybe I would be more attracted to him if he was fit, maybe I'm just jacked up, maybe it's all 3, I don't know. But it's not something I can explore now because I'm not going to cheat on him, and while he is okay with me having a one-off, I don't want to just throw down with anyone either. So I'm kind of in a position where I am in a very loving relationship. I don't want to leave him, but it's not sexually fulfilling for either of us. Me because of everything I said, him because he'd like to do it more. And the reason why I didn't have sex in the first place, religion, doesn't even apply to me anymore. I have tons of friends who say they wish they waited, what my husband and I have is so romantic, etc., but I strongly disagree. I'd have rather had their experience. I don't ever think I would go for one-night stands, but damn, I wish I had known more before I made a lifetime commitment. It's a constant pain point for me and something I hope to get figured out, but I'm not sure I ever will. I can actually answer one of these. I waited till I married at 22 years of age and was divorced by 27. One of the reasons was my lack of sexual history. She said it made her more insecure. I had a difficult time after. Mentally was not in a good place at all. Took almost 2 years before I snapped out of it. Hooked up with a couple of people, one at a time, just basic stuff. I'm no player. Till I meet this one person who got me out of my shell, and then I started exploring more things. Met my current wife a few years later and I'm much happier now. Looking back, I wonder if saving myself was worth it. I don't think I would have liked me as much had I broken my promise that I had made to myself. I can truly honestly say I've never broken a promise in my life, and I'm proud of that, but I wonder sometimes if I had done things differently where I would be, and if I would still be happy, and if losing a bit of pride would have been worth anything. I do know that I have 3 beautiful, wonderful children that I would give my life and soul for, and they are more than worth it. So in the end I will never complain about saving myself. My first mate and I, though, didn't wait till marriage. We did not have sex with anyone else till each other. We are on the road to divorce, paperwork tomorrow. She's had sex since the breakup, and I have not. It's been almost a year. For me, the physical and emotional are tied closely to each other. I haven't yet found someone I have the emotional connection with in order to have the equal physical connection. I'm not saving myself for marriage, however. I've been called prude, old-fashioned, naive, etc. for being unable to act physically without the emotions to drive it. I've even hurt people by refusing sex. Communication about how you and others work, what your boundaries are and why, as well as expectations, are key in any relationship. My suggestion: take the time during the divorce to learn who you are, what you want, what you don't want, and don't listen to other people's expectations or guidance on the sex you should or should not be having. Do what is right for you. Do it purposefully, do it consciously, do it wholeheartedly, and of course, do it with consent. Hey, this is me. I was 29 and a virgin until my wedding night and have since gotten divorced. Also male, straight, and decently good looking if those details are important to you. Before I got married I would tell the girls I dated on the first or second date that I was saving myself for marriage, usually because they were indicating that they wanted to have sex, so I had to come clear on that. About half the time the girl would storm out of the room fiercely angry, and occasionally they would apologize for reacting that way later when they realized I wasn't just trying to reject them. I ended up with some good relationships and some girls were actually very supportive of my decision. I ended up marrying one of them. So my wedding night was pretty amazing. It felt worth it for me, though she herself had not waited. She was willing to help me learn but unfortunately quickly got annoyed. On our honeymoon she told me she didn't really want to have sex with me anymore. That was a blow. I had just started to figure it out. From that point on we had sex maybe once or twice a week at best and it was awful. I regretted waiting for her. She also started drinking and things went downhill. I know now she was going through something bad herself and acting out, but she had trouble talking about it with me and we didn't have the money for a professional. Eventually the right decision for us was to separate and later divorce. I was so upset about waiting and having it go so badly that I decided to sleep around as much as possible. I had sex with the kinkiest people in the kinkiest ways for a few months, including a couple of weeks of shooting porn. I did also need the money. Some of it was pretty fun. In the end I don't think it was wrong to wait. I don't blame my ex either. The problems we had were mostly due to the imbalance of our sexual experience, and I'm sure it would have been entirely different if we had both waited for marriage. The best sex I've had was with someone I was compatible with on more levels than just sexually, so I wouldn't say that sleeping around was much fun. Mine is kind of a complicated story. I did have sex with my high school BF, who I was sure was my future husband. I highly regretted it and decided not to do it again until I got married. Enter my ex. I don't know why I dated him. Felt dejected because I had recently been broken up with my best friend from middle school and pretty much the only person I dated in high school. I didn't have sex with him until I married him. Another mistake story for another time. When I married him, the sex was underwhelming. He was very abusive in every way possible. When we divorced, thank the Lord, I kind of slept with more people than I care to admit. I didn't feel like I knew who I was and I guess was searching. It was never with anybody that I was seriously dating and more than one was a friend. I never had a one-night stand, but I am so lucky I didn't end up pregnant or with an STD. Funny enough, when I met my now husband, we didn't even kiss until we had been dating for a month. We have been together for 15 plus years and it is the best relationship I have ever been in. Going to post about a friend, although it is a bit rude. He met a girl in high school, she was Mormon, he was not. In order to date her, it was important to her and her parents that he convert to being a Mormon. He did. After a mission to Mexico a year later to convert people to Mormonism, they were allowed to officially date. He swore they never did anything other than pecks on the cheek, and in my opinion, he kind of had this "I'm better than you" attitude when me and my other friends talked out who we were hooking up with, in our 19s and 20s. Finally, they get married and they obviously start having sex. He said it was great, and he's wanting to talk about stuff that was almost fun to talk about when we were younger. But now it was odd hearing your 21-year-old friend be excited about fingering his wife. Eventually, she stopped wanting to have sex with him and he became a pretty irritable guy. After telling us that they no longer had sex at all, she gets pregnant. He was literally convinced he got her pregnant after not having sex for a period of time. Baby comes out a different skin color, obviously not his kid. We know the guy that got her pregnant. The Buy My Mixtape type, going to be a rapper, etc. Her parents find out and go to this guy's house and demand he convert to Mormonism, which his response was for a little pussy. No thanks, I know this, because my friend was there when the parents went to the guy's house. Why did he go along? No clue. Now my friend is raising this girl's baby, taking the baby to her family's church, while the girl and her family are shunning this dude and the baby, and it's incredibly sad to still watch 10 years later. Props to him though. We are still trying to talk him into going after her for child support. I'm sure by the time he actually does, the child/his son will be in college. He hasn't dated since. Edit. I just want to say, I don't believe that this crazy girl and her family to be a reflection of their religion. I think they are just crazy people. I was not necessarily saving myself for marriage, but my now ex-wife and I dated for 7 years before having sex, and we married a year later. We divorced after 14 years of marriage. So far we have been divorced for 1 year, but separated for 2. Right now I can't even think of having sex with someone else. The few dates I've been on seemed weird. I still have strong feelings for my ex. The divorce definitely was not a mutual want thing. I say all this to say this. Right now I want to say that I will not have sex outside of marriage, but it is easy to say that. I honestly don't know what my thoughts will be on the subject when I am ready.